Hey, how you guys doing? Good. Hey, if you have your Bible, you can turn to Acts chapter 2. That's where we're going to start today. All right. So we're going to read verses 1 through 4, and then we'll jump down to verse 40. We'll read a few more verses there. Acts 2. When the day of Pentecost arrived, they were all together in one place. And suddenly there came from heaven a sound like a mighty rushing wind, and it filled the entire house where they were sitting. Divided tongues as of fire appeared to them and rested on each of them. They were all filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in other tongues as the Spirit gave them utterance. Down to verse 40. And with many other words he bore witness and continued to exhort them, saying, "Save yourselves from this crooked generation." So those who had received his word were baptized. And there were added that day about 3,000 souls. And they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, the fellowship, the breaking of bread, and the prayers. And awe came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. And all who believed were together and had all things in common. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for the unity of the Spirit and the bond of peace, for the event of Pentecost and the outpouring of your Spirit. And you are still pouring out your Spirit today on your people. So I pray that as we draw near to you, as we gather together, that your Spirit would continue to move, continue to bring us together, that we would be changed and transformed by Jesus today. In that name we pray. Amen. Amen. Have you ever had the experience with a friend where, you share a moment that causes you to laugh so hard that your stomach hurts or that it brings tears to your eyes, and then you go to retell that experience to somebody else, and then the thing that you thought was incredibly funny is just met with a blank stare? Or worse yet, the person says, "That's real funny." Or listen, if somebody has to tell you it's funny instead of laughing, it's not funny. Okay? And it's just one of those moments where when that happens, you arrive at the conclusion of, well, I guess you had to be there, because presence makes a difference. And I wonder if a similar thing is happening here in Acts chapter 2, where Luke, the writer of Acts, is doing his best to capture what happened on the day of Pentecost, this unique event in church history where, yes, God's still pouring out his Spirit, but there was something about being in the room that day. And he's trying to convey what it was like for there to be this sound like a mighty rushing wind, and for there to be flames over people's heads, and for others to speak in languages that they've never learned, and the impact that it made on them. And as he's telling us this, I wonder if as we hear it or as we read it, if we are the one who just kind of has the blank stare on our face, or is just kind of nodding our head politely going, "Wow, that's amazing." If you have to say it's amazing instead of your jaw dropping in awe, it's probably just lip service. And so I wonder if Luke were the one here today doing the scripture reading, if he would arrive at that same conclusion of, after he shares what it was like to be in that room, if he would walk away going, well, I guess you had to be there. Because presence makes a difference. See, for the people in the room that day, what happened was more than just a story. They experienced God's presence and his power, and it changed them in a way that it set the whole world on fire. And what flowed out of Pentecost was the birth of the church. And what we see was more than just God's power on display, but one of the most impressive things that it caused was it actually brought people together. I mean, it says that they were together, they had all things in common, that they experienced what the scriptures called fellowship. The Greek word is koinonia, social intimacy. It describes a kind of commitment that was energized by the Holy Spirit that brought friendship, relationship, and commitment to one another. And Our challenge in today's digital age, in the world of social media or consumeristic approaches to church or AI chatbots, is to resist all of the substitutes and to become an alternative that consists of deep and genuine relationships, to be a community of belonging, real friendships, and real sacrifice. And that's what we're calling analog community. Real relationship with real people in real places, because presence matters. In analog community, it's the series that we're in, and if you missed last week, I encourage you to go back and check it out. Pastor Jacob did an amazing job painting the need that we have for this. And one of the things he talked about is that digital community is great as a supplement, but it should never be a substitute for analog community. So examples, if you missed service because you were traveling, you can jump online, watch it. I mean, we're streaming this service right now, so maybe that's you today. It's great to be able to go back and watch it. That's a supplement. If you've arrived at the conclusion, I'm just going to, like, long-term stay home, just watch church online because it's the same thing, that's when it becomes a substitute, because it's not the same thing. Like, you could download the songs that we sang today. You could go back and watch the message again. You could have everyone in the room as a friend on Facebook, but there's something about being gathered together in the room, in the real room when it really happened. Like, there's something about that that's important, that matters. Presence makes a difference. You know, if you play a game on your phone to unwind or to fill time as you're standing in line at the grocery store or whatever, that's one thing. If it becomes the way that you cope with stress in your life, and it's your primary way of dealing with worry or stress, that's when it's becoming a substitute, because you're looking at your screen to satisfy something that God has intended to satisfy. There was an ad. I don't know how I got pushed my way. I guess I'm coming into the age demographic that plays Candy Crush. But I had this ad come across my phone where it said, "Swipe away the stress. Download Candy Crush today." And I'm like, man, if that's what you're looking to, it's a distraction. Like, it's not actually dealing with the root issue. It's just a distraction, something to just kind of like take your eyes off of the worry and the stress as opposed to actually dealing with it. So that's when it becomes a substitute. Another example, technology, being able to call or text or FaceTime friends or family while you're away or traveling, or maybe they've moved, that can be a great supplement to a real relationship. But if the primary means you're looking for love or belonging is through comments and likes of strangers, that's when it's a problem. That's when you're treating technology not as a supplement, but as a substitute. Another ad, there was the Apple ran this ad for their last iPhone, and it was a husband and wife sitting in bed together, and they were kind of oohing and awing over this new phone. Kind of a funny ad. But at the end, the tagline was, I don't know if you've seen this or not, but at the end of the ad was this line, "Rekindle the feeling of love with the new iPhone 16. And I'm like, if that's what you're looking for, and though very few of us would consciously think, yes, that's where I'm looking for love or belonging or acceptance, though very few of us would consciously think that, I would say many of us are living that way. Many of us are living as if that were true. That we're looking for love, or we're looking for escape or peace in all of these different places that can't bring it. And this series, the sermon, it's not an anti-technology rant. I mean, we are in a building with lights on and air conditioning, praise God. And my voice is being amplified. Like, we have screen, all of this stuff. It's not an anti-technology rant. it's important for us in this day and age to be aware of the challenges that come with living in a digital age, and how do we faithfully follow Jesus in the midst of it. So things like what the digital age has brought, it's brought speed, options, and individualism. So the digital age has brought us speed. We have access to what we want, when we want, as quickly as our fingers can type or scroll. Okay, it's brought us options. We have access to what seems like an endless array of choices for just about anything. It's brought individualism. Everything from our online profiles to gadgets, everything is endlessly customizable, allowing us to emphasize our personality or our preference. The result of this, like, not the worst thing in the world, but unchecked, what happens is speed makes us impatient, options have made us shallow, and individualism has made us isolated. Like we're more connected than we've ever been, yet people are more lonely than they've ever been. And that's a problem. Like contrast that to what you see in God's design in the Garden of Eden, right? You see, instead of an infinitely increasing speed, you see a God who works and then rests, who's not always on all the time, but has a rhythm of work and rest. You see a God who walks in the cool of the day, not with, when was the last time you just went on a walk without an audiobook or podcast at 2 times speed? Or is that just me? I don't know. But just to go for a walk, that speaks of a certain kind of speed. We see, instead of endless options, we see God-given limits, like night and day, land and sea. You can eat of the fruit of any tree in this garden except for one. Limits. Limits can be a good God-given thing, yet we live in a time whenever we push against any kind of limitation, we want to live limitlessly. What happens is we weren't made to live limitlessly. And so as we try, things are starting to fall apart because we weren't made to live that way. We also see, instead of individualism, a community, a God who exists in community, Father, Son, and Spirit, who creates humans in and for community, so that it's not good for man to be alone. God's design has always been for presence because presence makes a difference. And so in Acts 2, when you see the birth of the church, they dedicated themselves to 4 things: the apostles' doctrine, the fellowship, the breaking of bread, and the prayers. So out of the 4 things that the early church devoted themselves to, 2 of them involved community with others, fellowship, and then gathering around a table. I think that's pretty significant because I would say that most Christians today would consider the vast majority of their discipleship to God consisting of a morning quiet time with God or some sort of devotional time with God, and then going to church on the weekends. Both good, both important, but it's not the whole picture. So God considers this to be essential, yet so many of us consider it to be optional. So if we as a church are meant to live this thing out, how do we create a sense of belonging? And to talk through that, I want to look at 4 different spaces that we can belong in. And as we talk through this, so many churches, ours included, we do everything we can to try to help people move from just coming on a Sunday service to getting involved in a group or some sort of small group discipleship path, to where you have this sense of belonging and you forge relationships that help cultivate, transformation and help you walk out discipleship. And for some people, that has absolutely been the case, where you've been able to find these groups of people within the church where you can do life together with, where you are walking out that Acts 2, having everything in common kind of picture, and you're experiencing transformation. For others, every time we talk about community, it feels like you're being pushed into like a forced relational purgatory where, for you, it's not been that kind of story. And it feels like pulling teeth, every time we talk about this. And there's a picture from an experience that I had several years ago that I think paints a great picture of what this looks like, talking about community in church. Okay, so in this picture is a group of guys that I work with, and we were on a trip, and we got stuck in an elevator. And it went from kind of funny at first, like, oh, let's see how many guys we can fit in the elevator. Ha, 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 real funny. To this picture was taken about 20 minutes into the experience. And I want you to notice a few things, which you probably already have. But there's a few guys, and if you know them, it makes sense. There's a few guys who are looking at the camera like, whoa, this is awesome. Like, we're together with people, and it's great. And when we talk about community in church, all of the people or all of the extroverts are like, sign me up. How many groups can I get in? I want to be around people all the time. I love it. And then there's all of the introverts who are not even looking at the camera, but are, pushing the escape button, like, somebody please come save me from this. And of course, Pastor Jacob's face in the background it sums it all up. Which is like, are you serious? How much longer, oh Lord, must I suffer? And so this is, you guys can't see it because you're all facing me. This is what I see every time we talk about relationships and connection and community in church. It's that kind of mix. Some people light up, let's go. Other people are like, and I'm gone. Like, get me out of here. I'm going to skip church for the next few weeks, get past this life group launch thing, and then we'll come back, Like, we come from all sorts of different places with this, but regardless, the truth is, if you're in Christ, you belong to his body. See, salvation isn't just relationship with God, but you're actually saved into a community of his people. You don't get the head without the body. That'd be weird. Salvation is a communal experience. God saves us, and then he places us in a family. We all belong together, as it says in Romans chapter 12, verse 5. He says, we are many parts of one body, and we all belong to each other. So what does that mean? How do we belong to one another? Does that mean that we need to be best friends with everybody in the room? No, that's not a realistic expectation. That would be even the most extroverted or the most people I know. It's just not a realistic thing. So how do we actually belong together? And that's where we're going to be unpacking, because there's multiple ways that you can experience belonging, 4 different spaces. And so that's what we're going to talk through today. And so I am going to be using a screen on the stage. And I will go ahead and acknowledge a few things. One, the irony of talking about analog community and me having a TV to do it. Okay? I get it. It's ironic. We couldn't get the felt board here in time. So we're going to do the TV. Also, for people in that part of the room, I'm going to do my best. I'm sorry. I may just, if I tilt it, then they can't see it. It'll be up there too. Okay. So the first and most important place of belonging is our relationship with God. This is the most important relationship to cultivate, because from here, everything else flows. This is the starting point. This is the foundation. This is the launching pad for everything else. And so first and foremost, we prioritize our relationship with God. And so that's the most important space. The next space that we're going to look at is the public one. So this is the big crowd. This is what we're engaging in this moment. So in a church setting, it looks like the gathering on Sunday mornings. For other spaces, it can look like It can look like if you go to a concert or a sporting event and you're in an arena or stadium. That is engaging in that public space, which is, groups of 100 people or more, and the numbers on these are approximate. Don't get hung up on them, but it's just painting a picture. So, in this space, you don't know everyone personally, but there's still a shared sense of belonging because you're there for something bigger than yourself. And, so for example, as a Mavs fan, if I go to a Mavs game, there is this sense where I look around and I go, these are my people. There's this shared commitment that we have, even though I don't have to know all their names. I don't have to know all their stories, and they don't have to know mine. But there's still a legitimate sense of belonging that occurs because we're engaging in this thing together. And there's still a shared commitment. We're there to root for the team. We're committed, even when they make really dumb trades. We're still there, and we're still committed. And so I think it's important to note that even at this level, there can be a legitimate sense of belonging. That belonging doesn't just happen here, but it can also happen here. Now, the expectations are different. It's not the same. It doesn't replace, by here I mean the public. It doesn't replace these personal and transparent and close relationships. But there's still a valid need for engaging in the public space. We see Jesus engage in the public space in places like Matthew chapter 5. It says when the crowds gathered, he sat down and began to teach them, and that was when he went into the Sermon on the Mount. We also see Jesus engaging in the public space in John 6, whenever he feeds the 5,000. And then in Matthew chapter 8, when he heals the centurion's servant. And so in this story, Jesus is walking into Capernaum. So he's in a public setting. And a centurion comes up to him and says, hey, my servant is sick. I know that you can heal him. Will you? And so the space that Jesus and the centurion are in relationally is more of the public space. They likely have never really made small talk or have sat down together to be close friends. And what I find interesting is when the centurion comes up and makes this request of Jesus, Jesus says, yeah, I'll go over, I'll come with you and I will go heal him. And the centurion said, I'm not worthy for you to come under my roof. But I understand how authority works. And if you just say the word, I know that he'll be healed. And what's interesting here is where this man was willing to go, the centurion, where he was willing to go with Jesus relationally was only right here in this public space. And Jesus honored that. Instead of him going, listen, this thing, if you're not going to let me get close enough to you to work through all your hangups with you being unworthy and all of that, that's the only way this thing's going to work. No, Jesus acknowledged and honored that he wasn't ready to go any deeper yet, and yet he still healed his servant. And so that's an example of Jesus engaging in the public space, because sometimes, when we're gathered together, there are people in the room right now who are more than, the fact that you're here says that you're willing to encounter God or God's people at this level. You're just not sure if you're ready for anything else. And if you're here and you're in that space, God isn't holding out on you. You may be missing out on certain things, but God's not going to withhold his presence from you just because you're not ready to go deeper with him yet. He's going to keep inviting you, keep coming to you, keep drawing you closer and closer. And so in the public space, groups of 100 plus people, the focus here is engaging with an outside resource. The next space is the social space. This roughly consists of groups of 20 to 70 people. And this is where we start to get a snapshot of, or we start to share snapshots of who we are. And not our whole life story, but just a little bit at a time. And we share glimpses of who we are as people do the same with us. And settings for this would be like, a backyard barbecue or parties, dinner with groups of people, chatting it up with neighbors or classmates. And one of the defining characteristics of the social space is small talk. Okay, small talk for some people is like breathing. I mean, they just ooze it. It's natural. They do it all the time. For others, it's like, I would honestly rather you shoot me in the foot than have to make small talk with anybody. And that's why I think of this space as the awkward junior high phase of relationship. And listen, if you're in junior high, I just want to encourage you, life gets better, okay? Hang in there, buddy. It's gonna be good. You're gonna make it. You're gonna come out the other side, all right? But this is that kind of like transition period in a relationship where you're still trying to figure each other out. You don't know, does this person handshake or do they fist bump? And so what happens in this phase is you experience the turkey, which is embarrassing, shameful, but it still happens. But you know what I mean by turkey. One hand goes in for the handshake, the other one goes in for a fist bump, and you just have this incredibly awkward exchange. It happened to me last Wednesday in church, right over here in that section. Went to meet somebody, boom, and boy, it was rough. But we talked about it, we laughed about it, and that's like part of engaging in the social space is just embracing whatever awkwardness comes. I don't really know how to talk to you right now. Like whatever that awkwardness is, embrace it, engage in it. You're going to be okay. You're going to make it out the other side. I promise you. We see Jesus in the social space in places like Luke chapter 10, where there's this group of followers of Jesus, this group of disciples that is somewhere between the ambiguous crowd and the 12 disciples. And so he sends this group of 70, or some translations have 72. He has this group of 70 that he sends out as missionaries. So we see that in Luke 10. Another example of this is in Matthew chapter 9, where Jesus calls Levi to be one of his followers, Matthew. And Matthew invites him over to be a guest at his house for dinner. And Matthew invites his friends who are sinners and tax collectors and all the sort. And Jesus just has a casual dinner with people that are the people that he's eating with aren't some of his closest friends, but they're also not just the nameless, faceless crowd. It's somewhere in that in-between where small talk can happen, glimpses can be given, and conversations can be had. So in our church, places where this social space can be engaged in is things like this. You may not be able to connect with the entire room, but the section that you sit in, probably so, where, getting to know, maybe getting here a little bit earlier before service starts, or hanging out a little bit later, having conversation with the people in your section is a way to do that. And some of our small groups fit more of this social space kind of format, where because of the size of the group or because of the nature of the group, it's more conducive to more of those loose connections getting to know one another than it is we're gonna come really close and we're gonna be really, really intimate with one another. And so those are a few of the ways that we do it here. Also, like after our baptisms, we have meals out in the foyer, just hanging around, eating a, pulled pork sandwich or piece of pizza, and just having small talk. It has its place. And it's important because you're feeling out, who are my people? and you're getting that picture clear. And honestly, this is a space that I think we have a lot of room to grow in, not just culturally, but also as a church. And so we're going to be working at creating opportunities for people to engage in this space. So in the social space, it's groups of 20 to 70 people. The focus is on sharing snapshots that build affinity and connection. And we'll circle back to it in a little bit. The third space, the personal space. So this is groups roughly of about 4 to 12 people. And this is where things get intimate or close. This space is comprised of people that you would consider to be your close friends, and people that you can share private thoughts or feelings with, where you see each other, you know each other, and you feel completely comfortable in being yourself. So you can be you, they can be them, you get one another, you don't have to qualify everything you say or do, and you can be comfortable. And, this relational space feels like home. You're around people that you can, kick your shoes off with, so to speak. We see Jesus in the personal space, obviously with his 12 disciples. Speaking of kicking shoes off, John chapter 13, we see Jesus washing the disciples' feet, which is pretty close. That is some relational intimacy there. And I find it interesting that in the washing of the feet, Peter has a similar pushback as the centurion. Right? The centurion who said, hey, listen, I'm not worthy for you to come to my house, just say the word. And Jesus honored where the centurion was at relationally. And then Peter, whenever Jesus goes to wash their feet, Peter gives a similar pushback of like, hey, I'm not worthy for you to wash my feet. But because Jesus and Peter are like, they have a closer relationship, Jesus' response is different. He says to Peter, hey, listen, if I don't wash you, you have no part in me. And Peter's like, on second thought, go ahead and not just my feet, but wash me all over. Like, make me clean. I want to be with you. It's in this personal space where you can provide that pushback. Like, the personal space is where you have friends who love you enough to tell you the truth. Like, you got something between your teeth and you need to get it. You got some issues in your life, and it doesn't, like, the issues in your life don't scare me to the point that I'm like, I don't want to be near you or talk to you anymore. We're going to walk through this together. Like, that doesn't scare me. I'm still here. And we long for that. And some of our groups really deliver on this. And this is oftentimes when we talk about community as a church, the hope is that people get into that kind of space with one another. It may not happen instantly, but the hope is that people can get to that kind of point relationally. So in personal space, the focus is on revealing private information, building genuine depth in relationship. For you, you may hear that and think like, hard pass. The thought of revealing private information, like that's not what I signed up for. I'm not jumping into that. But again, as you progress from the public to social space, you begin to get to places to where engaging in this doesn't feel like forced relational hell. It's something that you actually long for, and that you appreciate the fact that you have people around you that you trust enough to be comfortable with and to reveal who you really are. And I know some of our groups really, really deliver on this. There's a group that we have called Pure Desire, where it works through unwanted sexual behaviors. And I was talking with somebody who's a participant in that group on Wednesday. And like, what he told me was he expressed deep appreciation for this group of men, because he's experiencing freedom like he hasn't ever experienced before in his life. For something that has been a hang-up and an addiction for him for decades. He said, I'm walking in genuine freedom now, and I'm incredibly thankful for it. And so for him, the look in his eyes was not the look in the elevator that you saw like some of us have, of just God, get me out of here. The look in his eye was gratitude. Like, I found my people who are willing to walk with me through things. And whenever I open up to them, they don't go, that scares me. That scares me to the point that you need to go find somebody else. Like, that's what's available. And that's a hope for what we can get to. But again, this can feel like a massive leap from just going from public straight into that. And so that's why we need this social space to help kind of bridge that gap for people. And the last one, transparent, because I am not just running out of time. Okay, the last one, transparent, 2 to 4 people. This is the closest of the close, where you can be completely vulnerable, completely honest, experience no shame. These are your best friends or your spouse. And in this space, nothing is held back. Most people only have the relational or the emotional capacity to have this kind of relationship with just a very few people. And so it's a very small number. And obviously that's an incredibly valuable space. Jesus, we see him engaging in the space where he not only had the crowds, he not only had the 70 or the 12, but he also had the 3, Peter, James, and John. We see Jesus having a relationship with these 3, unlike all the 12, where at moments he would pull them aside, like the Mount of Transfiguration in Luke 9, or praying in Gethsemane, where he brought those 3 with him to keep watch. And so in the transparent space, 2 to 4 people, the focus here is living in vulnerability and openness with one another. So a few things to be mindful of, a few key things that I want to highlight in light of these 4 spaces. The first one is that you don't have to be all things to all people. So you don't have to have 100 best friends, unrealistic expectation. You don't have to be all things to all people. The second thing is that every space matters. So a lot of times when we talk about belonging, we think that it only happens here in the personal or the transparent. Belonging can also happen in the public and in the social as well. So every space matters, and every sense can provide every space can provide a sense of belonging. Belonging isn't experienced at only one level. The third thing, engage where you're comfortable and stretch where you're not. All of us will have a few of these that we tend to lean towards, that we're most comfortable with, and then we'll have a few that make us uncomfortable. And so for the introvert, man, give me these small groups. Keep it small with just the people that I'm close to. Love it. Force me to have small talk with somebody that's a stranger, shoot me. It's a huge challenge. For others that are super extroverted, it may be, I can work a room. I love that. I love meeting as many people, being around as many people, but ask me to get close enough to somebody that I'd be vulnerable and that they could hurt me, pass. There's going to be these areas where each of us are comfortable and each of us struggle. And so the encouragement would be, the areas that you're uncomfortable with, stretch. Engage in them, because every space matters. Every space makes a difference. And our growth always happens outside of our comfort zone. So be willing to get uncomfortable. That fourth thing, invite others in. You have to be open to God bringing people into your life. You have to be willing to engage in these and be open to God taking people from stranger to friend. And so just real quickly, I want to circle back to the social space real quick, because I think this is the space that has taken the biggest hit culturally in light of the digital age that we're in. Because as Derek Thompson, who wrote an article called the Antisocial Century, he talked about how in some ways the digital age has strengthened the public space, because we're able to connect with people over shared interests all over the world. And in some ways, the digital age has strengthened our closest relationships, where we're able to stay connected with the people that we love despite geographical differences or whatever. But he talked about the one that's taken the biggest hit is this middle space, this social space. And he speaks of it like this. He said, it's wreaking havoc on the middle ring of familiar but not intimate relationships with the people who live around us, which Dunkelman calls the village. These are your neighbors, the people in your town. We used to know them well, but now we don't. So this isn't just happening at a cultural level, but it's happening at a church level. The ability to engage and talk with the people that are just around us. Like previous generations, you guys had to. And you guys killed it. I don't know I think you still do. But like older people do this really, really well, at least in my experience. For example, as I was preparing for this sermon, Friday morning, I was at a coffee shop and I had both AirPods in, the universal sign of don't talk to me, leave me alone. And as I went to refill my coffee, an older gentleman, I won't give a name or I won't give a number on the age, lest I offend you, but he approaches me, says something, and I'm like, I'm sorry, what was that? And he said, man, I sure hope you played basketball because it would have been a shame to waste that height. And we just strike up a conversation. And, we find out that we have mutual connections and mutual friends. And it was really neat to find mutual connection with someone in real life as opposed to Facebook having to tell me, hey, you have 10 mutual friends, And never, ever does it ever cross my radar, the thought, you know what, there's a stranger and I really feel like talking to them. Like never, that never crosses my mind. But for some people it does. And I really admire that in you. But I will say as a church, we have to yes, the gathering is important. Yes, the intimate relationships are also important. But we really, really have to pay attention to that middle ground and make an intentional effort to embrace the awkwardness of the social space and get to know the people around us. Because I think the early church valued that highly. They called it hospitality. Paul said, always be eager to practice hospitality. Henry Nouwen, speaking of hospitality, he said this. He said, hospitality means primarily the creation of free space where the stranger can enter and become a friend instead of an enemy. Hospitality is not to change people, but offer them a space where change can take place. It's not to bring men and women over to our side, but to offer freedom not disturbed by dividing lines. That's what we're called to as a church, is to be a church of hospitality, to create spaces where people can come in and move from stranger to friend, move from isolated and lonely to connected in a sense of belonging and brother and sister. And that takes time. It's not something that can just happen overnight or can be forced, but it does take a willingness to step out and to practice hospitality. This is what we're called to as a church, as opposed to the digital age where our communities are just built around our preferences. In God's community, it's built around his presence. And so that's my encouragement to us, is to pay attention to what spaces are you killing it in? What spaces you're engaged in? And then this week, take to prayer, what are the spaces that I am avoiding? And God, how can I lean into that more? How can I engage in it more? Because it matters and it makes a difference. Because we're not just about our comfort, we're about the kingdom of God coming to earth. Amen? Amen. Hey, if you would stand with me, because I went too long, and I'm sorry. You can write a Connect card.